Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to do a DIY Dollar Tree Christmas sled redo. We're just going to take the Christmas sled, the famous Christmas sled, and we're going to put our 2019 spin on it. And we're going to use 2 incense burners. They're $1 each at the Dollar Tree, or they're 88 cents at Walmart if you can get them there. We're also going to use this little wood decorative plaque from the Dollar Tree, but if you can't find that, any printable with the red truck on it will do. We're just going to work a little bit more on our painting technique today. So the first thing we're going to do is take off the original risers, and they're these little tiny brad nails that I'm just using a needle nose plier to peel off. And I noticed that because I started to sand and I was like, ooh, the sandpaper's getting caught. So you're not going to need the risers, but of course we don't throw them away. No, we don't throw anything away. I bet you they'll show up in another project. You stay tuned. But what I'm going to do is I sanded the glue off the back really well, and I just gave it a real quick coat of white chalk paint. My white chalk paint is just about at the end, so I watered it down, which is why it looks sort of transparent. But it's just a base coat, so I don't have to worry about that. You know, don't waste your empty jars of paint. Throw some water in there, make whitewashes, make all different things that you can do for base coats and stuff as well. Just a good way to keep the cost down and spread the wealth. I'm coating the entire thing with white, and I will tell you that the words and the stuff does come through, so we're going to use that in a minute, but I wanted it to have a white undertone because I wanted that red car to really pop out, and if I just took red on wood, there's a good chance that it would just sort of soak into the wood and make it more neutral looking. Now, as far as these are concerned, what I did was I held them up to the sled, and I saw how far I wanted them to extend, and then I marked that with a China marker. And then I just took my my regular utility knife, scored it 2 or 3 times, snapped it against the edge of the table, and I didn't worry about the fact that it sort of didn't come out perfect, because that's going to glue to the back anyway. So as long as they're roughly even, roughly about the same size, that's all you need to worry about. Now, once the paint's dry on this, we're going to go ahead and we're going to do a technique. Of course, I didn't tell you you needed hot glue and paint in the beginning, but I hope you guys would have realized that. But this is just Waverly Truffle paint. I took the same white paintbrush, kind of squeezed some of the white paint out of it to kind of create a middle tone. I'm taking my straight edge ruler and a foam brush, a narrow foam brush, and I'm just creating planks. I wanted this sled to look just like old and weathered, but I didn't worry about the background color. I wanted the background color to be white, and this is going to sound silly maybe to you why, but snow. That's what I was thinking. I was just thinking instead of it having black in the seams and stuff, it would probably be snow that you'd see on the sled, right? So that's why I left that white. But you can go ahead and paint the whole thing black if you want to. But what I really want to show you is that you really want to use a dry brush. You can always go back over it over and over and over and over until you achieve the color that you want. But if you put too much paint on in the beginning, that's it. You just won't be able to get it back off again. So it's much easier. Just take your time, be patient, dry brush, coat and coat and coat. And then what I started to do to create the striations in the wood is we're going to push down on the dry paintbrush. That's why I like to use the foam brushes. I know that a lot of people do dry brushes with bristles. We do dry brushes with bristles, but whenever I'm doing wood graining, I like to use the foam brush, because if I push down on it, like you'll see here, if I push down in certain areas, I will create sort of a darker brown variation, almost like the wood grain will come through, okay? And there you go, like that. You see how I just pushed it in there, and it just creates that different variation just in the brown alone. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of the, this is black, this is ink, chalk paint. We're going to blend it off like we did there, just to get a nice mild black paint. We blend it into the truffle that we already have on our brush, and just taking the paintbrush sideways. You do not want to be able to paint a straight line. If you ever looked at wood grain, very rarely are the lines perfectly straight. So if you're unsteady, that's the best. And if it looks a little too too harsh for you right now, just be patient because I'll show you then. We're going to blend it again, almost like we had stain. So we're just taking straight truffle on that same paintbrush. We didn't wash it. We didn't wait for the black to dry. We're just going to do this to kind of create a blend. So this is just straight truffle, and I dry brushed it off. And now I'm just coating over all of those black striations just to create more of a subtle graining. And as far as the support riser there, that's actually like the steering bar. I know that a lot of people, and I have in the past, have created them like the slats continued, but they're actually usually carved out of one piece of wood. Because think about it, it's to turn the sled, and if you had multiple pieces of wood, it's a good chance it would break on you. So what I did was I created a curved arch. You could just make your graining go straight across, but I made my graining go curved. Okay, I'm going to set that off to dry, and now we'll work on the car. So the first thing I want to work on is the tree. This is just Spanish moss from the Plaid Home Decor line of chalk paint. And I used a very stiff bristled flat brush, and I'm using it on its edge sort of to create the striations of different basically pine needles. And I'm just using the one color. But what we do is we spread it thin and leave it thicker to create the variations in the color. And I actually want to tell you the point that I think I wanted to tell you the most was that this picture is edged. Like basically the picture is inset from the edge of the wood, but I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to create everything just straight to the edge of the wood. A perfect example is these tires. So as you can see, the tires are sort of set in there, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go at the edge of the wood and pretend that that circle just continues around. You could do this by tracing. You could make a template. You could find the perfect size circle and trace it, all those things, but I'm just going to freehand it because what I've decided to do to show you guys just an idea is besides the tree, we're going to just including the tree, we're just going to leave the red for last. And then we're going to go back over and touch up everything with shading, and I'll show you that in a minute. This is Castle, this color. I'm using Castle for the windows. Not traditionally, but more often than not, you see like a light blue in the windows, but that doesn't really go with my decor, and I didn't want to add another color. So I just left the gray. My walls are gray, my home's gray. I like it this way. I also used gray for the fender and the bumper, not the fender, but the bumper and the front bumper and the rear bumper, because words just eluded me, excuse me. I'm also going to use that same Castle gray for the hubcaps, but I didn't wait for the one on the right to dry. Apparently I put a lot more paint on there than I thought I did, because normally it doesn't take very long for the paint to dry if you're not careful, but I'm not patient. So I will just wipe it off and go back. So now, after I painted the windows, I just took that same green paintbrush, didn't add any more paint, just went ahead and touched up the leaves on the tree there. And now we're going to go with the red. This is Crimson, Waverly's chalk paint in Crimson. I think it's my favorite Christmas red out of all the paints that are in style this year. The car did have headlights, but I didn't really care for them, so I went ahead and I was like, let me just wipe them away, and we can always add some detail that may look like headlights in the future. But this is just a small flat paintbrush. You know, flat I like, especially when they're small, because you can turn it sideways and get their edging as long as you don't push too hard on the paintbrush. But you can fill it in the flat areas really nice. Now, when you are ready to fill in the flat areas or make a straight line, you can push a flat paintbrush flat. I know that sounds silly, but push it down and you can see the edge of the paintbrush will give you like a perfect edge of your paint as long as you have enough paint on there. Like I didn't there at the end, but I went ahead and I filled it back in. And again, these projects are supposed to look handmade. They're not supposed to look like you bought them in a store. And it's funny because even now, these days, the stores are creating things that are selling things that are handmade. So what's the difference if it's your hand or someone else's hand? I'm telling you, a personal touch. So right now, it does look a little cartoony for me. So we're going to do a little bit of shading and a little bit of a more like oomph to this truck or car or wagon. I think it's a station wagon. Originally, I was going to put the woods on there with like popsicle sticks, but I was like, that's extra, Jerry. Don't do that. So now I'm taking a little bit of black, and I'm with the red that's already on the paintbrush, and the truck is still very wet. I'm going to add some shading, just shading where you would see. Basically, anything that was far away gets a little shading. Anything that's under stuff gets a little shading. Anything that's like where a curve would end is going to get shading. So like the edges of the windows, I'm making sort of that door frame situation. The undercarriage, because the car goes back under, so that would be shading. The hood of the car, because that goes far away, and that would be shaded. So just kind of like that. You know what I mean? So now I'm taking the green paintbrush again, and I've dipped it in the black, and I've dipped in a little bit too much black, but you'll see me. I try to recover here in a minute. And I'm just doing this to give some more dimension to the tree. And then I'm touching up the wheel wells and again adding a little bit of shading to the bumper. Oh wow, look, I still have the green paintbrush. That's not right. I don't need the green paintbrush for the bumper. I need the silver paintbrush. Well, now I have to wait for that to dry, don't I? I'm a hot mess. Hot mess express. So now we're going to add some black to where the headlight was. And then we'll touch up the silver on the bumpers, and we give them a little bit of shading. Now we're going to let it dry because we want to add snow, but we need everything to be dry before we add snow, or all we're going to do is make pink, if you know what I mean. But what we could do now is we can go ahead and add our runners, risers. There's a name for these. Jimmy always tells me the name for these, and I can never remember them, but you guys probably know. Treads. No, I'm horrible. He's told me like 20 times, and I can't remember them for some reason. But we're going to go ahead and add the sled pieces. So what I've done is I've turned it over, and I'm using the existing sled piece to basically make it even. So what I've done is I've pushed that up against the edge of the sled. I've lined the bottom up with the bottom curve of that sled so that I can have them be even. So I know that I've matched the top of my piece to the top of the pre-existing piece. And then this way, when I switch it to the other side, I can do the same thing and they will be even. Now, as far as the bottom's concerned, we're going to roughly do the same thing. We're just going to put that piece back so we can make it even. Basically, line it against the top of the runner so that the bottom of the runner, it looks like it's straight across from it. And we're just going to give a ton of Gorilla Hot Glue. I will tell you that I dropped this morning after it was already set. I was taking its pictures. And the Gorilla Hot Glue stuck so well, all it did was rip the paper off. So I had to glue it back. But it doesn't make a difference what it looks like in the back as long as it looks good in the front. Now, I will tell you, Jamie from the Crafty DIY guy, who I totally love. I follow him on Instagram. He actually made skis out of the over-the-door wreath holders. Those would look so adorable on a sled. I'm just telling you. And if anybody does it, give Jamie credit because I'm telling you, amazing. So I glued the support steering piece on there, and now I thought that it would be really great if we took this stencil. This stencil is from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to show you, like, we're going to pounce some white paint on there, and this stencil is just a little too thick for paint, in my opinion. I know a lot of people are doing it, and a lot of people are getting good results. But maybe it's the fact that I'm using chalk paint. I'm not really sure, but I found it so much better, the results so much better when I used this ornament marker. I hope that Dollar Tree comes out with these ornament markers again this year, but these are absolutely perfect. Don't forget, stencils aren't just for paint. Stencils are for pencils, and stencils are for markers, and stencils are for pens. So don't forget that when you're going ahead and do your stencil work. If you feel like your stencil, what I was originally going to do before I remembered I had this white paint marker, or if this white paint marker wasn't going to work, what I was going to do is I was going to go in with a Sharpie and fill in all in black and then go over it in white. That's what I was going to do, but instead I found the ornament marker and it did work really well. It filled in all the areas. What I did do was I want you to be careful around the little E, which I ended up covering anyway, and I really love the way it's covered, but around the little E, the little part that fills in the E kind of like wants to bend on you. Little pieces want to bend on you. I would say it's not a high quality stencil, but you know, it's 50 cents. What do you want for 50 cents, right? Now I'm going to go back over the part that I tried to paint just to get a little bit of a better coverage. And now what I am going to do is, as I turn it over, I'm going to fill in, well, first I'm going to try to outline, and then I realized I want to fill in. So I'm taking a skinny, an ultra fine Sharpie, but then I realized, wait, hold on a second. I forgot to connect the O and the parts of the wonderful, and all of the little parts that get connected. You always want to do that when you go back for a stencil. Just gives it more professional finished paint look. But now I'm going to do is I'm going to outline, actually I'm highlighting, well technically I'm giving it a 3D look of with the ultra fine Sharpie. I'm doing it to the small letters and the word wonderful. Then I'm going to take my regular Sharpie, the fine point Sharpie, which is just like a regular Sharpie, is actually called fine point. And I'm going to do the same thing to the words most and time, just to give them a little bit more dimension, help them pop. And what's also nice about outlining your letters is that you also can, if you flub, I mean, you have a stencil, maybe something got under the stencil. If you're going to go ahead and outline it, you can go ahead and fix those flubs. It's a really nice touch. And here I am worrying about everything on the bottom, and then when I get my car on there, I'm like, oh, it doesn't fit anyway. And I really did put that stencil down, and I really thought it was going to work, but no, it didn't. So now that the truck is dry, we're going to take that same white paintbrush that we used 1,000 times, and we're going to go ahead and we're just going to add snow. Barely any paint on this paintbrush. Barely any paint. What I like about foam brushes, like I mentioned before, is that it's almost no paint. If you push down a little bit harder each time, a little bit more paint will come out. And then I just blended whatever with my finger that I thought might have been too harsh. When I went to go glue this, I was like, oh my gosh, it covers of the year. And I was like, that's perfect. And it now says it's the most wonderful time. And I think I love that so much better. I do. I didn't create this as a hanger. I created it to stand on my fireplace. And that's exactly where it is. So that's it. Hope you guys really enjoyed this tutorial. If you do, give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions at all, go ahead and leave them in the comments down below. Don't forget to share this video with friends and family. Anybody you know might be interested in seeing how to do any of these techniques or any of the finished product. And if you haven't yet, click subscribe. And when you do, a little bell will pop up. When you ring that bell, YouTube will let you know whenever I upload a new video. So don't forget to click all. And as always, you guys take care. God bless. And we'll see you next time. Bye.